Hey everyone, it's Meteorologist Joseph Trujillo-Falcón. This last season, tornadoes broke records all across the board, and meteorologists were in the front lines of communicating and forecasting so that the public stayed safe. Of course, as we continue to improve our technology to forecast weather, it is also vital that we include human data in this process so that we can make sure that our community stays safe. Researchers at the cooperative institutes across NOAA and across the NOAA National Severe Storms Laboratory are finding innovative ways to incorporate human data in this entire weather communication process. And what better person to talk to us than Dr. Justin Sharp, research scientist at the Cooperative Institute for Severe and High Impact Weather Research and Operations in partnership with the NOAA National Severe Storms Laboratory. Him and his team recently developed an app where we can incorporate citizen perspectives into broader severe weather contexts. And not only are we going to be interviewing with him, but also Dr. Kim Cloko-McLean, a research scientist within the NOAA National Severe Storms Laboratory that will give us a bigger picture as to how this can truly impact and really shape the way we communicate weather information in the future. But first, without further ado, welcome aboard, Justin. It's always good to have you here.
Thank you. Good morning. How are you?
Doing wonderful. And I think it's a very awesome conversation to have because recently your team just developed a new app called Tornado Tales. So I first wanted to start off by you introducing this app to us. Tell us all about it and how the public can use it to enhance severe weather information.
Okay, yeah, so thank you for that. So the new Tornado Tales citizen science tool is an online survey that provides a way for people to anonymously report their tornado experiences. The survey asks basic questions to collect information about individual responses to warnings and watches, including how they prepared and monitored the weather, what safe space they used to shelter at when a warning was issued by the NOAA National Weather Service. And what we're hoping is that this can help us identify areas where NOAA messages may not be resulting in the most safe and effective actions. And then we hope that we can hone our safety messages. And those safety messages might actually need to be tailored for different parts of the country that experience weather in different ways at different times.
That's truly fascinating just because when you contextualize it in the bigger picture, it's critical to have that public data so that we can know how to better warn communities in the future. And so with all of this being so fascinating with your new app, what kind of questions should the public expect to be asked in this survey?
So we asked some fairly simple questions. So there's a little tornado icon that you can drag to kind of roughly where you were. Now, you may be at home, you may be at work, you may be, you may at school, you might even be on the road. You can drag the tornado to that. Now, once you submit that, by the way, it doesn't show up really in fine granular detail on the web pages, so people can't like your address or anything like that. So one thing we wanted to do was to protect private identifiable information. So we don't really ask for that. We ask, like I said, where people were, what sort of structures were people in? Were they at home, were they at school, were they in a big box store? All of these things make a difference. How safe they felt, whether they received a tornado watch, and if they did anything during those hours at a tornado watch. Did they search out further information? Did they, make sure that they had the weather apps on their phone updated? Were they, putting together a go bag should they need that, and for finding out or clearing out their safe space? And then what they did in the warning. If they received a warning and they had to shelter, where they sheltered, and whether they felt safe sheltering there. And one of the reasons for doing this is to actually spot gaps in the sheltering sort of continuum, really, because what happens is that some people may have a basement. That's easy enough to get to. Some people may have been lucky enough to afford and purchase a safe room. That's easy enough to get to. What about folk who are not necessarily in those sorts of structures, maybe living in a mobile manufactured home? Where are they going? They know and they're told, please leave this structure now. But unless you have somewhere to go to, that makes that decision process quite difficult. Now, we might assume we know about these things, but we don't. We need to ask the public these things. And we really need the public to help us by telling us exactly what they did and being as honest as they can, because then that really helps us understand where the gaps are, what's missing. And then maybe as a broader society, we can actually address some of those issues.
No, and it's very important that we do because that sort of information is truly what makes sure and really ensures that our community stays safe during these disasters. And so with that said, there's so much valuable information that we can learn from. Who will have access to this data? And is it available before, during, and or after the storm?
So the data itself isn't going to go out there immediately. So what we need to do is collect it, I'd say at least for a year or so. We need that one full cycle of severe weather throughout the year. Different things happen at different times of the day and different times of the year. That's really important. So we're maybe separating out those nocturnal or nighttime events from the daytime events, because people's perception of risk sometimes changes within those things, and their also ability to act. So I think that's really important as well. And I mean, you mentioned there being like a record kind of forming like number of tornadoes and, you know, damage and things like that. Yes, but this was launched about sort of April, May time, when actually in the southeast, for instance, it was quietening down in the severe storms front. But as we now move into summer, the places where those tornadoes are likely to occur and the severe thunderstorms are likely to occur moves further north and slightly further north and east of us. And so we're hoping that those folk will be able to log on and do this. So that's the first side of it. The second side of it is collecting that data. And then what we need to do really is we need to just verify, that these things did occur in those areas, because we want to be scientifically rigorous about what we're doing. So I think that that's really important. And so we've got some people working on that now. And then we can actually start to look at things by event. What I would like us to be doing in the future is producing sort of a graphical output to show some things. But the actual raw data, what we want to do with that is to be able to share that with other research scientists, obviously other social scientists, and see what they do with that data, see how they interpret that data. Because I think sometimes there isn't just a one size fits all, especially with science generally. And so having people looking at it from a communications perspective, having people look at it from a social equity and social vulnerability perspective, all of these things will give us lots of different ways of looking at the same problem, and hopefully give us a much better holistic approach to how we deal with, the threat of tornadoes.
Totally. And it looks like you and your team have thought this out thoroughly all across the board to not only be able to collect it, but verify it so that we can make sure to have this data available to other scientists and even some practitioners so that we can improve our communication system going forward. Oh, great stuff. I guess my last question really just revolves around what's next. I know Tornado Tales is a wonderful start to make sure that at least social scientists and practitioners have access to data. Is there any plans to expand this sort of service into other hazards or even other languages too?
So, I mean, that's interesting. It's a conversation we've definitely been having at the lab. We've definitely been thinking about things, what's next. The way we're also looking at this is that this initial year is almost like a pilot, and we may iterate on some of the questions, for instance, because, that sometimes happens. You don't get everything right. One thing that we've had to be clear about, though, that this is, government collecting data. Therefore, it had to go through a very strict OMB process, which took over a year to do. So we take all of those things very, very seriously. And then I think the other thing is this: we would like to be providing this in other languages in the very near future. But what we want to do is make sure, A, that we've really got our question set. It is right, it's working for the public, there aren't any frictions or people not understanding any of our questions, so that then we can iterate and improve on what we've got. Then once we've got that really well packaged, then we need to have the right conversations with the right people to think about how this gets used and translated in the best way, so that it is well understood by speakers of different languages. Because, as you know, it's not just a case of, quick, do a Google Translate, boom, that's it, job done. It's far more nuanced than that. And certainly when you're asking scientific questions or questions about the weather or questions about feeling, they need to be written appropriately by a native speaker and then tested a little bit and then pushed out online. So again, I'd love to say, oh yeah, we'd want to do this tomorrow. I'd love to do it tomorrow. However, like all science, it's kind of a slow process as we slowly iterate and improve on what we're doing. And then, like I said, on the back end, then I'm hoping that what we'll also be able to do is kind of produce statistics, rather like the United States Geological Survey Did You Feel It app, which was really, kind of the impetus and the inspiration for this. I got a question at a conference. It was a NOAA 3-minute thesis, and I felt that I didn't answer it well. And there's nothing more frustrating as a scientist as feeling you just haven't answered that question well. But it really made me think about things. And I was like, well, why don't NOAA have an equivalent of the USGS's Did You Feel It app, that you can report what happened when an earthquake occurred, how you felt, how much shaking there was. And it's really interesting that, we developed this here now. We've got to this stage here now. We've got this product out here. But I've also known, and I've talked with the USGS, the people who actually did that initial app, and they started to include some social science in what they're asking and Did You Feel It now as well. So I feel that these conversations have really improved understanding both in the physical science there around earthquakes, as well as the physical science and the social science around what we're doing here within the weather enterprise. So I think there's a really great opportunity here for people to not just sit in scientific silos, but actually to communicate and work together to improve these whole, risk communications and understanding of risk, and also the public perception and ability to act on risk. That's what we're trying to learn here. And I think that USGS are kind of thinking along similar lines as well. So hopefully all good things, hopefully all positive, and, watch this space, I think.
Yeah, no, truly. And I congratulate you and your team on a job well done for changing the game on how we can analyze severe weather events in the future and truly consider the human perspective, because after all, the public are the people that we are serving. And so I wanted to just finish off today with, well, I'm convinced. How can we find this app, and how can we make sure to contribute this in future or even past tornado events?
Yeah, it's a wonderful point there. And I didn't mention that, yes, you can include past tornado events. So, if you were, in the Joplin, Missouri tornado in 2011, we want to hear from you. The reason we started this up, one of the things was that, only the largest tornadoes used to be sampled. So when there was a very, very large tornado or maybe outbreak of tornadoes, NOAA National Weather Service went into the field and they did surveys with people. And part of those were asking these more social science questions. But we didn't have this generalizable set of data. And this is what this is about, trying to get this from as many people as possible so that we know that we're getting, the right feedback. So it's a really easy way of finding this. You can put in NOAA as NOAA tornado tails, or even just tornado tails into Google, and it should come up pretty high on the search results there. And once you do that, you can click on the link and it will take you directly to the map and the survey, and then you can just follow through. It takes around about 4 or 5 minutes to actually undertake the survey. If you wanted to put in more information or type in the text box we have at the bottom there to tell us about your experience, that might take you a little bit longer. But broadly speaking, it's a really quick and easy survey to fill out.
And it sounds pretty accessible. And of course, we'll be including that in all of our social media channels across MyRadar platforms. And you can also find that at the bottom of your screen to make sure that you can have access to this app. And I encourage you to share it with your family and friends so that we can have a better communication system going forward. As always, Dr. Sharp, thank you so much for your insights. And now we're going to be transitioning to Dr. Kim Cloko-McLean, where she will be contextualizing how does tornado tails fit in the bigger picture of the scientific enterprise. Well, perfect. Now that we know a little bit more about tornado tails, it's important to contextualize this into the bigger picture of where this fits in the meteorological enterprise. And what better person to answer that than Dr. Kim Cloko-McLean, a research scientist and team lead at the NOAA National Severe Storms Laboratory Behavioral Insights Unit. Welcome, Kim.
Hi, Joseph. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's always an honor, Dr. Kim Cloko-McLean. Now, let's get into the gist of this, just because it's been so fascinating to learn about the Tornado Tails app and even the concept of human data in general, so that our public understands what is the importance of human data in severe weather contexts. I know we always love to see radar and technological and forecasting updates, but where does human-centered data fit in this bigger picture?
Right. Well, the answer, sadly, so far has been in not many places. And that's one of the reasons that we're so excited to pursue this technology as one way of collecting behavioral data. Right now, when severe weather events happen, we have observation systems of the atmosphere that can tell us everything about the composition of the atmosphere and what it is about weather events that could make them so damaging. But we collect almost no information about the people who are affected by those events. Without that, without those observations, it's really hard for us to say very simple things like, do our warning systems work? And for whom? Are they effective? And are there things that we should consider doing to help people to make better decisions and inform the things that are important to them? And so what we're really gunning for here is to start a ball rolling where we can collect data just like meteorologists do and offer that to research communities, to practitioners, and help address these really important questions.
That's such an important context to consider. At the end of the day, whatever forecast we produce, it's always important that it goes back to the publics we serve. So thank you so much for that perspective. I'm more curious now to learn more about how you expect to use the Tornado Tails data in the future. So being the team lead at the Behavioral Insights Unit, what kind of research do you hope that emerges from this product?
So the Tornado Tails app is one of 3 methods we're using to collect data about how people received warning information, understood it, and ultimately responded when tornadoes were possible. One of the things that we're hoping to do on the science side then is explore what are the pros and cons of different ways of collecting the data. So this citizen science app is one way. We're also working with the National Weather Service, and their personnel, when they go to do damage surveys and they get on the ground, they often encounter survivors and the immediate aftermath. And oftentimes people want to talk with them about what they've been through. And they came to us actually saying, hey, can you help us develop a tool to collect this data and inform your science? So we'll see, do we get different kinds of responses and maybe engage different kinds of people than the citizen science app does? Citizen science is something that some people engage in, but maybe not everyone. So maybe the people who are on the ground, they might collect a sort of different perspective than people who come to citizen science apps. And the third way is we're leveraging a network of social behavioral scientists who study disasters across the country, people who live in these places where tornadoes are influential, which in the US is a large fraction of the country. And we're empowering them with the exact same survey and a little bit of funding through the Natural Hazards Center Quick Response Program to go into the field and help us to collect this data. And we can see what are they able to provide when they go out and collect this data with us. At the end of the day, we'll compile it all into a big database, and we'll be able to tell our weather service partners a lot more about not just for EF5s, the most damaging tornadoes, or the generational outbreaks, but for all the tornadoes that are so common that maybe aren't as high rating, but are the kinds of things that still affect lives very profoundly and are, the things that occurred 99% of the time. What are people doing? And, what are the things that we should be concerned about as we go forward to consider our meteorological practices and improving them?
Well, fascinating work all in all, really. It's so impactful to learn more about tornado tails and really how it can benefit the weather community as a whole. And you have such a great point highlighting there that we need to worry more about than just those grand tornadoes, but also focus on the smaller ones that really affect a lot more lives every day. And so I wanted to wrap up today with just a quick question more about the future of tornado tails. This is, something new in the severe weather world. Do you see this expanding in any sort of way, maybe to other hazards or any other enhancements that your team is considering in the future?
Yeah, when Justin came up with this brilliant idea to have a citizen science app, it immediately came to our minds that, oh my gosh, we could see if this works for tornadoes. What kinds of feedback do we get? Does it take off? And we were motivated by the USGS Did You Feel It app, where they have an earthquake reporting system. We thought, we could do this for any hazard. We could do this for flooding. We could do this for lightning. We could do this for all kinds of things where we really could benefit from this deeper knowledge of how different populations across our country receive information from the Weather Service, from the weather enterprise as a whole, and make choices to respond, and for all hazards, help people to better navigate the risks that they face.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much for your insights, Dr. Kim Clocco-McLean. She's a research scientist and behavioral insights unit team lead at the NOAA National Severe Storms Laboratory. And with this new tool, Tornado Tales, you'll be able to report how you experience a tornado before, during, and after. And not only that, but you'll also be able to get a better insight into information. You can report even a tornado that happened recently or even ones that happened before. And always a great way to bring up our MyRadar historical radar feature, where you can even look back to 2017 at previous events to get even a refresher of maybe an event that happened near your town that you'd love to report on. But of course, the link to the Tornado Tales app is featured below. So just make sure you check that out, because if more people contribute, we'll have a better understanding of how severe weather communication shapes itself in the future. Thanks so much, Kim, for being here today. And I really do hope that this makes a greater impact in the community in the future.
Follow MyRadar on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Download MyRadar on iOS, Android, Amazon Alexa, Xbox, and Windows.